So this is basically it. And I'm going to close by talking about Star Wars. And the reason I'm going to talk about Star Wars, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, is simply this. This is rewriting history by not planting the flag. By not showing the planting of the flag, they are making a decision based on their current political beliefs, which is socialist, left-wing communists. And so I'm going to say this is what the left does. They rewrite history. And I can prove this to you by saying that if you walk up to anybody under the age of 40 in the United States of America, I don't care where they are, I don't care what they're doing, you walk up to somebody in a mall and they're at a certain age, under 40 and maybe over 20 something, right around in there, that entire generation, you walk up to them out of the clear blue sky, you don't introduce yourself, you don't set anything up, you simply walk up to them and say, who shot first? And every single one of them will say, Han shot first. And why is this important? It's important because in the movie that we all saw, in the Star Wars we all saw, Han Solo is in the cantina. He's about to fly Obi-Wan and Luke to where they're going to rescue the princess. He gets cornered by this bounty hunter named Greedo in a very bad green rubber face suit. Greedo sits him down. Greedo has a gun on him. Once he's got a gun on him, that's self-defense at that point, and everybody knows it except for the left. So Greedo sits him down and says, I'm taking you to Jabba the Hutt. Oh, come on, Greedo. Jabba the Hutt's going to kill you, and I can't wait to be there solo. I want to watch it happen. And he says, yeah, I'll bet you do. And he has unclipped his blaster, and he fires under the table, puts a hole the size of a pizza plate into Greedo. Greedo goes face down into the table. There's smoking ruin. Han tosses some money to the bar proprietor, and people cheer. They stand up in their, they get out of their chairs, they launch themselves to applaud this. Because it's a heroic thing. Because once Greedo pulled a gun on him and said he's taking him to Jabba the Hutt, that is essentially the same as pulling the trigger. Pulling the gun and telling him he's going to take him to be killed is the same as pulling the trigger. So, Han was absolutely right to shoot him. He was 100% right to shoot him morally. But that was 1977, and as the years go by and the progressives become more and more overripe and start turning into the fermented nonsense that they've become, then in the first of the special editions, we find all kinds of stupid, nasty, primitive-looking CGI glomming up everything and making Mos Eisley Starport look like, Grand Central Station when it used to be just a desert outpost. It was much better in the original, but put all that aside. Now you find out that when they go and sit down at the table, Han Solo says, yeah, I'll bet you would. And then Greedo pulls the trigger on Han. Greedo shoots first. And they did that digitally. They re-edited it, and they digitally added 20 or 10 years after the fact, Greedo shooting first. Which not only isn't true, but doesn't make a lot of sense, right? He's about to take this guy at gunpoint to Jabba the Hutt. He's told him he's going to take him to Jabba Hutt, and now he's just going to blow him away? What's the point in that? Why not just blow him away right away? Now you have to carry him over there, what's left of him. Don't be ridiculous. But they did it, you see, because they thought that Han shooting first would be a bad moral standard to set for people. So instead of making a movie about how morally bad guns are, they don't do that. They go back and undo history, because it is history. I saw Star Wars in the same way I saw the moon landing. I saw them happen. Now you can say one's fictional and the other one's not, but nevertheless, my experience of watching them was real. So, there you go. Now, here's the part that's really disgraceful. You cannot find a copy of Star Wars where Han shot first. It is unobtainable. You cannot get one. If you do not have the original VHS version of Star Wars that was released in the, I want to say, late 70s, early 80s, then you will not be able to buy for love of money the scene the way the scene was shot. And if you try to tell somebody that Han shot first, you will not be able to prove it. There's no way to prove it. And in 10, 20, 30 years, if the subject comes up, people are going to think, well, maybe he shot first, maybe he didn't. 40, 50 years from now, they'll say, of course Han did not shoot first. Of course Greedo shot first. There's no evidence proving that Han Solo shot first. Which is why in 40 or 50 years, when the moon landing finally is remade again, the next time it happens, it's going to be Natasha Armstrong or somebody, Nina Armstrong, and it's going to be a lesbian of color who who lands on the moon in order to provide social benefits to the people on Earth and makes a big speech about how the money shouldn't have been wasted when there's so many people starving on Earth. And that'll be the true story of the moon landing as it actually happened when you leave it up to these people. They cannot allow history to stand because all of the history of everything that these people believe in is a very terrible history. And our history is not terrible. Our history is magnificent, and never more magnificent than it was during the mission of Apollo 11, which was the high point of Mustafa Armless, beautiful, which is the high point of human history. That mission was the height of human achievement. I don't think it's going to be surpassed. I used to think that it was, pray that it was, assume that it was. I'm not so sure anymore. But that flag deserves to be shown being planted on the moon. And if they want to make this into a political thing and take the most dramatic moment from the moon landing away from the moon landing, because they don't want to upset the Chinese, then I think we need to make this a crusade. A crusade. And I think we ought to arrange, for the first time in our lives, if we care about this country and we care about history and we care about Apollo and we care about America, I think we ought to start thinking very seriously about getting some kind of protest groups together like the Tea Party, and we're not going to get in people's faces. We're just going to stand outside of every theater where it's being shown with a sign that say, please don't go and see this movie. It's an insult to Neil Armstrong and the people that went to the moon. And make them pay. Make them pay. I want to make them pay. They never pay, and I want to make them pay. Miserable low-life swine. It was good for an hour and 15 minutes of blood pressure of 210 over 180, something like that. All right, we've got about a month to pull this off. A little more than. October 11th is when it opens. And I think that the way we need to do this is to make it crystal clear. We are not going to be insulted like this in order so that you don't insult mass murderers in China. Now, if you want to be reasonable, put the flag planting back into the movie. Not only will we call off the boycott, we will make it an enthusiastic endorsement, and the people that we've sent out there to make sure nobody goes to the movies, we'll try and get as many as we can to go and see the movies. But you're going to have to put the moon landing back in, the flag planting back in for that to happen, because it deserves to be there. It deserves to be there. It was not a common thing. By the way, Ben Shapiro got this exactly right. Exactly right. He said, so let me make sure I get this straight. Racism, uniquely American. Slavery, uniquely American. Misogyny, uniquely American. Homophobia, uniquely American. Landing on the moon, a collective achievement of mankind. Everybody says I should wear my Finders Keeper shirt for the firewall. I'm wondering if that would not hurt it more than help it. I gave it serious thought. I'll think it over. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to close by saying this is what they do. This is what they do. They rewrite history. That's how they rewrite history. They made Greedo shoot first, and the reason they made Greedo shoot first is because that way people can think that it was the Democrats that freed the slaves, and that it was the Republicans that was in the Ku Klux Klan. It was the Republicans who had the Jim Crow laws. It was the Republicans who turned those fire hoses on those black students going to school in Mississippi in the 60s. Only it wasn't. It was Democrats. And that's why you have to have the ability to rewrite history. That's why George Orwell, who understood totalitarianism better than anybody, understood. I'm trying to get this quote exactly right. I should have it memorized. He says, he who controls the past controls the present. He who controls the present controls the future. I think that's what he said. Now, that's a good point, too, there, Bresic. A human achievement. Oh, so does that mean Americans get credit for building the Great Wall as well? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. That's a really good point. Let's look for that in the future. Make sure that we don't have anything, we want to make sure that when they re-release Zulu and the Battle of Rorke's Drift, we want to make sure that all the British flags are taken out of that movie because that was a common achievement of humanity. Those who control the present control the past. Sorry. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. The saying is, those that control the present control the past. The people that are alive today can go back and rewrite history. Those that control the past control the future. So, yeah. No, we didn't build that. You didn't do it. It's not, no. And a final thing on this is, I really do wonder if, genuinely wonder, if the flag planting would have been in if Barack Obama was still president. I think this thing is designed, I don't think I know it. It is designed to slap the face of those patriotic Americans who had the audacity and the nerve to get up on their hind legs and tell these elite left-wing douches to pound sand. They have not forgiven us for this, and they never will. Yeah, there's another one, Woody Fool. This started back, this whole argument started probably much earlier, but what was it, 8 years ago now when Superman Returns? And they ask, what does Superman believe in? And the editor or something of the Daily Planet says, so what is he all about? Is it truth, justice, all that stuff? Or all that jazz, something, truth, justice, and all that stuff? They basically say, truth, justice, and the American way. We can't say the American way because that'll make the Chinese angry. And by the way, America is loved around the world, was loved around the world because America was America, and America was proud to be America. And people think that by making Americans ashamed of being America, that this will improve people's opinion of us overseas. No, it'll only improve the opinion of these oikophobic, self-hating, neurotic bastards who have the controls of the pop culture. Those are the only people that are happy by this. The Chinese are not going to respect us more for having pulled this out. They're going to laugh. They're going to have much greater contempt for us. And not that I care. But anyway, yes, and that's another thing, by the way. Another thing. I just love all these little points. If they want to be historically accurate, I'm even willing to do this. Put the planting of the flag back in the picture where it belongs. Buzz Aldrin had mentioned, not for quite a long time afterwards, but he mentioned that when the upper stage, because the lunar lander is the spidery looking thing that goes down and the silver part with the leg stays there, but the kind of angular looking top part, the ascent stage, detaches and flies off into space. Doesn't all leave it. The four legs and the gold bottom of the thing stays there forever. It's still on the moon. We have pictures of it. Buzz Aldrin admitted that as they were blasting off from the moon, because that Apollo 11 mission, I've said this before, I'm going to get this graphic for the firewall. The Apollo 11 mission, if you put the lunar module on the pitcher's mound, the legs extend some distance beyond the pitcher's mound, but all of the extravehicular activity of Apollo 11 happened inside the infield of a baseball stadium. Neil made one trip that was about halfway into right field, but every single step that they took on Apollo 11, think about this, with a lunar module on the pitching mound, they never went outside of the dirt line ever. The whole thing happened that close to the LEM. But because it was such a close, since it was so close to the LEM, Buzz Aldrin admitted that during the takeoff of the ascent stage, he saw that the blast from the ascent engine knocked the American flag over. Okay, if you really need to show the American flag being drawn through the dust, if that's the trade that you want to make, fair enough. Because that actually happened. That's actually history. Put the planting of the flag back in, and then you can show the American flag being blown over. Maybe that'll make you feel better. Maybe you can show the American flag lying in the dirt. Maybe that'll make you feel better. But as far as I'm concerned, the flag is lying in the dirt of the bloody moon. It's lying in the moon dirt. And it can sit there for 1 billion years, and it'll still be there. And there's 5 others just like it, too. 5 others. You know, the thing that is the most depressing and also the most hopeful is that all of the problems that we face are self-inflicted. All of them. that's kind of reassuring, and at the same time, it's also terrifying, because there seems to be something inevitable about a society that reaches a certain level of success, where the elites become so bored and so embarrassed and ashamed of themselves that they convince the rest of us, try to convince the rest of us that it's not worth it, and it's true. People love Superman because Superman was about truth, justice, and the American way. That's why Superman is popular around the world. And when people say that it's about truth, justice, and all that stuff, that doesn't make people go, oh, we love America even more. That makes them think, what happened to the people that used to be the light of the world and who believed in themselves? What happened to them? You know how hard it is for me to have a Russian wife who is more amazed, appalled, disgusted, and disgraced by this than I am? Do you know what that feels like to be married to somebody with a history like the Soviet Union, who looks at what's going on here and is more upset about this than I am? And I'm plenty upset about it. She doesn't understand it. I don't understand it either. What's the matter? Why are people doing this? We get more like the Soviet Union every day. The Soviet Union gets more like America every day. Those are not trend lines that I particularly care for. But I do think somebody needs to get on a horse about this thing. And I think the whole thing needs to be about, hey, it's not about the flag even. The flag is the impetus. It's the rewriting of history. It's the rewriting of history to suit your politics that we can't stand and that we're not going to tolerate any longer. I have to tell you, I just don't know. I mean, I get the feeling that if this thing ever, John C. Pershing, my God, man, what a great thing to say. My God. Here's a direct quote. He said, "You don't like the flag on the moon? Modify, come and take it then. Go and replace it." That's the way I like it, man. That's exactly the way I feel. You don't like the American flag on the moon? Go up and get it. Go get it. I remember back during the eject days, somebody pointed out that the flags that are on the moon are made out of nylon. They're very much like the nylon American flags you can buy and that flying outside of my house right now. But they said that due to the fact that there's what am I trying to say? Due to the fact that there's no ultraviolet protection on the moon, due to the fact there's no ozone, no atmosphere. So ultraviolet radiation, along with everything else, comes directly down to the surface of the moon, and they said that the ultraviolet rays destroy the pigments in the nylon, and that within a few years, 10 years after having been placed on the moon, 20 certainly, all of the American flags up there have been bleached completely white, and some wag pointed out, and he said, well, that means future historians are going to think that the French landed on the moon. Trying to destroy Confederate monuments, exactly. Change history. Yeah, but the flags are bleached white, and that the red, white, and blue is gone, and that's okay with me. That's fine with me. You can still see the stitching, and you can still see the stars, and you can still see the stripes, and the flag on the base of the lunar module is still there, and I don't even care about that. The footprints are there. The footprints will be there for billions of years, long after we're gone, after the whole idea of humanity is gone, unless we have the future I thought we were going to get. Long after it's gone, those flags and footprints will still be there in pretty much the same condition that they were when I saw them be placed there myself. And by the way, for all of you moon landing denying idiots, not you, I mean the ones that are out there, talk about it being, on the sound stage and stuff. Honestly, have you not seen the footage from like Apollo 15, 16, and 17? How on earth do you get by the rover? I mean, these guys went miles and miles in this thing. How did they pull that off? I mean, the rover's part of the moon landing, right? I mean, I only learned this just a couple days ago. There were a number of series of different missions. What was I saying? Yeah, I think I got this right. Apollo 11 was a G mission, was just a landing. Let me work it backwards. There was no I. So the J missions were originally supposed to be Apollo 20, 19, 18, 17, and 16. 15, 14, 13, and 12 were supposed to be H missions, and Apollo 11 was a G mission. In other words, I didn't know this until very recently, but that they had broken down the Apollo landings into different classes, and that Apollo 11 was one class, and then the next class of missions was going to be 12, 13, 14, and 15, which would give them a lot more room. They go a lot further. They're prepared to stay longer, stay for more than 24 hours, stay for a couple days, and then the J missions, they moved Apollo 15 from the H to the J's. The J missions were the ones with the rover, where they're going to be on the moon for 3 days, and it's going to be a real big deal. I don't even know why I brought that up. There is it's a question of Woody Fool here. Canon has a camera with a digital zoom so strong it can show you the rings of Saturn. It won't be long. We'll be able to photograph the Tranquility Base. We were able to photograph Tranquility Base 4 or 5 years ago or longer, a.k.a. Woody Fool. And then with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, we were able to fly that low enough over the all of the Apollo landing sites and see the hardware on the moon. What's especially cool is about a year ago or less, recently, they had LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, on even closer. It's not perihelion and it's not perigee, it's I've forgotten. Low point in the orbit, but please look it up. Look up Apollo landing sites, and you will see, with the latest pictures, especially from Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, you will be able to see everything. You can't see individual footprints, but you can see dark trails where all the footprints are. You clearly make out all 4 legs of the LEM. You can make out the flag. You can make out the ASLEP, the Apollo Science Lunar something or other, the science packages. You can see all of the stops. You can see all of it. And these idiots are still saying we didn't go as photographs of it from lunar orbit. That doesn't matter. They'll never be convinced. It's not an intellectual problem with them. It's an emotional problem. I think, there was a contest, I think it's still in place, a prize to put an unmanned rover on the moon that could be controlled from the Earth. Unmanned rover landed on the moon. Private prize for people to do that privately. I think they ought to do it, and I think that they ought to land it in the Sea of Tranquility, and I think that little rover ought to be able to roll right up, not get too close, but roll right up to the Apollo 11 site. That's where I'd put it. If I had a chance to put it anywhere, I'd put it there. I would put it there, and I would pay an enormous amount of money to be able to look through the eyes of a rover in 4K stereo digital, and watch this little rover approach this golden kind of a mound in the distance and get closer and closer and closer and see the shattered remains of the lunar module descent stage, and see the flag on the ground, see the science instruments, all of it. By the way, if you point a laser at the moon and you point it at the 6 places where we've landed on the moon, turns out that laser comes bouncing right back again. Exactly where we said it would be, to the foot. So, how does that happen? Moon landing deniers. Did we land laser reflectors on the moon? We were able to do that, but we couldn't put people there? I've said this 100 times before. It needs to be said again. Next time you run into a denier about the moon landing, simply point to them. You can see this on any mission. You can see it on Apollo 11, but it's especially prominent in 15, 16, and 17. just simply point out to them what's happening to the dust. If you watch the astronauts move on the moon, you will see that the lunar soil, which is very fine-grained, gets kicked up and flies through the air like a spray of water. It looks exactly like a water skier making a cut turn where that spray of water comes flying out like that. There's not a cloud of dust, not a particle of dust rises, not a particle rises into a cloud because there's no atmosphere. But you watch the dust, and the dust will move in 1/6 gravity exactly like water because there's no atmosphere to make that dust do what dust does here on the Earth. And that can only happen in a vacuum. And as I've said many times on this show, I've had a number of engineers tell me that building a sound stage the size of the one that would be needed to fake the moon landings and making that into a vacuum is much harder than going to the moon. If you've ever seen the actual vacuum chambers that they have here on Earth, there's a really big one. NASA's got a big one. And, when I say big, I mean it's probably, 30, 40 yards across and maybe 100 yards high. And it looks like Cheyenne Mountain. It's nothing but reinforced concrete and steel. And the reason it is so unbelievably massively structured is because nobody appreciates the atmospheric pressure on Earth, because atmospheric pressure is everywhere. But if you had a perfect vacuum on the surface of the Earth, it is going to want to collapse so badly. You just take a look at the world's largest vacuum chamber. It's built like a prison. It's built like a bunker because the atmosphere is exerting so much pressure over every square inch of everything down here. And if you take that away in order to make the dust effect work, then the entire studio collapses like a tin can. And sometimes you can see that. By the way, this is something that people just don't even think about. But, you know how plastic straws are destroying the Earth, right? I mean, I know most of you know this, but some of you don't. Plastic straws are destroying the Earth, yes. Okay, so we put a plastic straw in this thing and I sip out of it. And I sip, and I see the water comes up the straw, and the thing goes down. Well, why does that water move into my mouth? Oh, because you're sucking on it. Okay, what does that mean? Well, you're making a vacuum in the, you're reducing the pressure inside the straw. Yes. So the air pressure inside the straw is less. Yes. What makes the water defy gravity? What makes the water defy gravity? Why is it that when I suck on a straw, water defies gravity and comes up this tube? Why? Well, it's because I make an extremely small pressure differential inside that tube by sucking on it, and the weight of the atmosphere, which is pushing down on the Coca-Cola the whole time, pushes down onto the surface of that Coca-Cola and forces it up into the straw. It's taking the path of least resistance. So that's the world we live in. There's grim satisfaction in knowing that no matter what these bastards do or say down here, and no matter how much history they rewrite, and I don't think they've even started yet, there is a grim satisfaction in knowing that even if they are completely able to erase this and make it entirely what they want to, as a big, Barack Obama landed on the moon. That'll be the story, for sure. He landed on the moon in order to prove how wonderful healthcare is. And he planted the giant Obama flag on the moon. Fine. There's not much I can do about that. There's a little, but there's not much. So the part that I find grimly reassuring is, yeah, but the flags are there. The lems are there. The footprints are there. The rovers are there. They're there. They'll be there long after we're gone. And if that's not true, if we outlast the moon landing, it's only because we did get into space. And if that's the case, I don't mean to keep coming back to this every episode, but the flag thing pissed me off so much that I thought, well, what can I do about this right now? Aside from attacking them, what can I do about it in terms of story? And I realized, well, I'm gearing up to tell this story with these computer-generated characters that take place in the future 1,000 years from now, but it is a spacefaring future in this Star Citizen game world. And I can write any damn thing I want to. You see, this is the thing I can do with this that I can't do without this. So I can have our hero decide to visit Tranquility Base 1,000 years from now. Easy. I can have him stand there in a skin-tight pressure suit. Everything that takes place in this game takes place essentially in the vacuum. So he's wearing almost like his daily routine uniform, like his clothes. And I can have him standing on the moon, easy. And then I can pan around, and then I can show, get a lunar module 3D model, smash it up a little bit to get it what we think it was looking like, and then put a little dome over it or something like that, and have a little guardrail around the outside. And the best part of it is have maybe 2 or 3 people there. You know? Not like there's a big, enormous line. It's not like the line to get up to the top of the Empire State Building. Just a few people. Like the kind of people, like about the same kind of crowd that you would see at the Four Corners, where those 4 states merge. And you can have, if you do the Twister thing, you can have an arm and a leg in every one of 4 states. And just have it be out of the way. And there's like maybe a little visitor center, but there's a dome protecting it. You can't have people walk. Because I'm old enough so that I went to Stonehenge when I was a kid, when I was 16. And when I went to Stonehenge, you could walk right up to Stonehenge. But then people started carving their names on Stonehenge and spray painting Stonehenge. And that's what they did to the beautiful pictures that we had in the ambulatory of the Museum of Science. We had these incredible black light panoramas of astronomical things. They were there from the time the thing was built in 1966. And by the time I left there for college, it was 1979 or 80. They were there in immaculate condition. And then something happened. And then we would come back, and then you'd find that people had marked on them, written on them, carved their name on them. Then they'd written obscene things on them. Then they tried to put plastic over those, and then people scratched the plastic. And then they finally took them down, and I found them outside one day when I went to visit this place. Years after I'd worked there, I used to go back every now and then. And I went to the planetarium, and as I was finished going to say hi to people. I was walking back to my car last time I was there. On the side of the planetarium building, there was this stack of what looked like wooden flats, and I thought, what the hell is this? And I looked over, and it was these unbelievable series of 7-8 foot high, 4 or 5 foot wide, black light paintings that were hand-painted showing Copernicus and Galileo with his telescope, the lunar module in orbit, and Arecibo radio dish, all of it. And they were stacked outside. And in Florida, it rains all the time, and it's sunny all the time. They've been out there for a year or two, and the wood that they were on was warped, and it was all chipped, and it was all stacked up, and it was just simply left there to rot. By the way, here's something else we might think about doing. I'd love to get your take on this, too. It occurred to me that we could go to these movies, go to the showing of First Man, and then at the appropriate time we could just simply walk down to the front, take a little American flag this high that you smuggled in, right when it's supposed to happen. Walk down to the front, stand in front of the projector, put it down like that, salute, and then go sit down. Yeah, liberals do ruin everything, Dave Booty. That's what they do. This is what happens when you believe that what you want to believe is more true than what actually happens. You have to ruin what actually happens. Otherwise, there's evidence that you're wrong. It's 1:45. I'm not going to do a lot of questions. I'm going to take a couple here. And I know Eric has been screaming about me having to take his questions, so I'm going to see if I can do that too. Let's have a look.